One of the biggest mysteries of the upcoming Zelda game, Breath of the Wild, is what happened to the Master Sword. It's shown at the very end of the reveal trailer to be broken, corroded and decayed, a state in which we've never seen the Blade of Evil's Bane before. What could have happened to the iconic weapon? Could the Master Sword have died? The Master Sword in Breath of the Wild isn't looking too good. It's dented, rusty, forgotten in a clearing in the woods. And today, I'm joined by ZeldaMaster to theorise on exactly what happened to this great blade, and why it's in this sad state.
The first thing to note is that the Master Sword is outside the woods, and probably has been for some time by judging how broken and overrun the stone steps are, covered in moss and foliage. The sword may have been exposed to the elements for a long period of time, which some fans have pointed out could be the reasoning of its decayed, rusty state.
That'd be a perfectly good explanation if this was some average Joe sword, which we see plenty of in Breath of the Wild. But this isn't any old sword, this is the Master Sword. In 2 of the 3 timelines, the Master Sword was left in the pedestal of time and forgotten, and over countless years the Temple of Time crumbled around it, almost beyond recognition in the Downfall timeline, yet the Master Sword stayed untouched and unbroken. The Master Sword has showed that something as simple as age in the elements isn't enough to touch it. This is something more sinister.
The worst we've seen the sword before this was in the Wind Waker, when Ganondorf killed the Sages of Earth and Wind, causing it to revert to a dull state. We learned that in Skyward Sword that this is the penultimate stage of the Master Sword, and with the praise of either the Sages of Earth and Wind, or the goddess herself, the sword will become the true Master Sword. But we can clearly see that that isn't the case here. The crossguard is still out, and the symbol of the Triforce is on the blade. We've never seen the Master Sword in a state anywhere near this bad.
So today we pose the question, what if the Master Sword has died? I know what you're thinking. The Master Sword can't die, it's just a sword, a fancy looking sharp slab of metal. And sure, we thought it was, until the release of Skyward Sword, which told the backstory of the Blade of Evil's Bane, and with it, the story of Fi, the spirit of the Master Sword.
It's explained in Skyward Sword that the goddess Hylia, after the great war between the Demon King Demise and the forces of light, created a sword. This was the goddess's sword, which would assist her chosen hero in the case that Demise rose again. And to accompany the sword and aid the hero in completing his great task, Hylia created Fi, the sword spirit. Throughout the course of the game, with the 3 sacred flames, Link tempers the goddess sword into the Master Sword. It's then blessed by the mortal reincarnation of the goddess Hylia, Zelda, causing it to become the true Master Sword, the famous blade we all know and love. After Link battles and defeats the Demon King using the Blade of Evil's Bane, he places it in the pedestal in the Temple of Hylia. With a heartbreaking farewell, he brings his relationship with Fi to a close, as she falls into an endless sleep in the Master Sword.
And with that powerful goodbye ended the only time we've ever seen the Lady of the Sword herself, Fi. Fi was one of Link's most memorable... Yes, I know, Fi. I like to live my life on the edge, you know? Anyway, while at times mind-numbingly annoying, Fi was one of Link's most memorable companions, because although she began the journey as an apparently soulless and robotic character, by the end she'd grown emotionally into what could be considered a true friend. A friend who expressed her happiness at the time spent with Link and desired to see him again in another life. And although Fi entered an endless sleep in the Master Sword, there are a few times later in the series when we've seen signs of what could be Fi's consciousness.
The Master Sword has often been seen to choose its wielder. For example, in Ocarina of Time, it is said by Rou that only one worthy of the title, Hero of Time, can pull it from its place in the pedestal of time. It's completely plausible that this is because of Fi. Through her, the Master Sword has some sort of awareness and sentience.
But what if the Master Sword was no longer possessed by Fi? Look at the sword. It's alone in a clearing, rotting and decaying. And we can tell that this is no natural decay. since it's not only covering the exposed metal blade, but also the hilts, which is presumably painted or made of some other material, yet is rusted just the same. And of course, as has been proven on multiple occasions, the Master Sword doesn't rust when it's left to the elements. Additionally, the rust seems to be most prominent around the areas of the sword that are dented, which really gives the impression that something attacked the sword, causing the corrosion. I'll take you back to science class with this question. When do things decay? The answer's pretty obvious: when they die. When an organism is alive, the immune system will defend it against any bacteria or fungi that manage to get inside. But when the organism is dead, there's nothing to defend against such attacks, and so the body begins to decompose.
What if what's happened to the Master Sword isn't any different? If the blade spirit Fi died somehow, then perhaps the sword will begin to decay over time, just like any sword would when left in the elements.
So this points to the possibility that the reason behind the Master Sword's dire state in Breath of the Wild is quite a dark one, that Fi, the blade spirit, has died, likely at the hands of the Calamity Ganon, who's described as having spread ruin and corruption 100 years ago. But is this the end of the legendary sword? I don't think so. For one, the blade is featured heavily both in the game's trailer and logo, so it wouldn't make sense for it to play such a small role in Breath of the Wild. Instead, what if part of the game's story revolves around reversing the damage to the Master Sword? Maybe resurrecting it?
Resurrection is a huge theme in Breath of the Wild, and no one really seems to know why. Link wakes up after 100 years sleep in the Shrine of Resurrection, and then uses the Sheikah Slate to awaken 15 towers of resurrection all over the map. Could it be over the course of this game, Link will resurrect the spirit of the Master Sword Fi and return it to its original power?
This could very well be a story element of the game. Fi was created millennia ago by the goddess Hylia. Because of this, it'd make sense that the goddess herself, or someone using the power of the goddess in her name, could revive Fi and restore power to the Master Sword. And who have we seen in Breath of the Wild that has both a connection to the goddess Hylia and the theme of resurrection?
The Sheikah! It's always the Sheikah. The monks constantly refer to the goddess Hylia, saying such things as, "In the name of the goddess Hylia," and "May the goddess forever smile upon you," suggesting that this game has some sort of connection to her. Zelda is also likely present in the game, who we know as the mortal incarnation of Hylia. The Sheikah, of course, are the creators of both the Shrine and the Tower of Resurrection, which connects them to that theme.
So could Fi have died before Breath of the Wild, resulting in the Master Sword becoming nothing more than a normal blade? Will we have to resurrect her somehow, perhaps using the power of Goddess Hylia to restore power to the blade? What do you think the reason is behind the Master Sword's dire state? Leave it in the comments below, and thank you to ZeldaMaster for joining me on this one.
Hey guys, I'm ZeldaMaster, and I do all sorts of Zelda content over on my channel. If you're looking for more Let's Plays, discussions, or my new Zelda lore series, be sure to check out my videos. Speaking of which, there's one which focuses on the Koroks due in the upcoming week, featuring Zeltik. So look out for that. Also, sorry for sounding super sick.
If you liked this video, be sure to leave a like, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. Also, I'm doing a Let's Play of The Wind Waker over on my gameplay channel, so click the link on screen or in the description to head on over to the first part of that. Cheers guys, and I'll see you next time.